this is a very, to me, Pittsburgh was like a micro New York, because you have the beautiful city, the nice buildings, and the downtown area, then you have the suburbs, and you have the hill, and I'm from, back in New York, we had a project called Killer Hill, and now I'm in the hill in Pittsburgh, you know what I mean, kind of very similar. There was some killing going on there too, right? but the traveling mind, I would recommend for any artist. Since those days, I was able to have success in music and travel around the world and go to different places, whether it's Albania, you know what I mean, whether it's the pyramids of Egypt, you know what I mean, whether it's the Colosseum, the remains of Athens, and all these places. I'm traveling, I'm seeing life, and it's really expanding my creativity. But then I realized something after I gained all this, was the benefit of being stuck on an island, or like in this case, you guys on the peninsula. The benefit of it is that you get to nurture something that nobody else has.
Yeah.
When the old explorers would travel, from Europe or from the East, and they would come to other parts of the world, they would bring botany with them. So they'd bring plants that wasn't there, or they'd take plants back. One of our greatest writers, Darwin, was botanist. He's walking around looking for flowers and things. And by searching one thing, he finds another theory. So I think that, it's cool to expand, but when you stand still somewhere, you get the chance to develop like in my book, I use this parable. I said, King Kong is developed because he's isolated on the Big Island. You know what I mean? He's on a place where there's nothing there happening, and he's growing 40 feet, 50 feet, 60 feet. He's not going to come. There's no hunters. There's no outside influence. You watch Godzilla, and they look for Godzilla. He's on Monster Island. You go find Martha. She's on the island, So sometimes, you want to find a wu-tang clan, you got to go to Staten Island, right? Sometimes these islands and these peninsulas do give you a chance to develop something great and unique. And when that develops and goes out to the world, it re-inspires the world.
Yeah, so, this is the second book, right? And so the first one is the wu-tang manual. And in this one, you want something that explores wisdom, but you still get at that idea, which is like taking the crew to New Jersey and saying, like, don't be distracted, let's get here and do our work. So inside that question is really to talk about how you conceived the first book, what your ambition was with that, and talk about your growth into this book.
Well, the funny thing, I know one thing I got a habit of doing is telling the truth, right? So I'll tell you the truth of this situation. When they came to me to write a book, it was because, when you make a success in this world, you get the chance to do other things. That's why rappers got clothing lines, why ball players got sneakers, because you become a commodity that can sell things. So it's more of me as a commodity to sell a book. And I told the agent and the publisher that I want to do a book about wisdom. I want to do a book that can help people. He said, nobody want a book like that, kid. You should do a book about the wu-tang, you know what I mean? And so the agreement with them was, I will do a book about the wu-tang if you allow me to do a second book that's more expressive and more wisdom-driven. And they agreed. And so the first book we did was the wu-tang manual. And within that manual, you'll find some morsels of wisdom and some knowledge in there. And you'll get a lot of the wu-tang symbolism of what we pull out. And you'll learn how to make cocaine also.
I already know how to make it.
But yeah. He's saying, that's no French. I like the French too, man.
Okay, so I'm going to learn how to make cocaine.
Right.
And in this one.
But then in the Wu-Tang manual, so, if you're a fan of the band, you definitely could, you'll get a lot out of it. But once we completed that and they had some success, they came back and they kept their word. So, man, you can write the book you want to write. And so I said, okay, I want to write a book that's not an autobiography, but something that could take stories and things that happened in my life and maybe perhaps help a kid or a person make that left turn when it's time to make the left turn, or make the right turn when it's time to make the right turn. Because we all are traveling in this world, and we all are taking it day by day as we do. And we all going to get where we want to go. If you're going somewhere in Pittsburgh, you want to go down to Kirkpatrick Street on Central, you can find your way there. But if you've got a map, it's an easier ride. You know what I mean? And better than GPS even, because GPS had us more like this.
Instead of your driver.
Right? But no, and so my book is sort of a map, you know what I mean? Because some of the things I'm going through, I've been through, you will go through. Just as being an American, you're going to come across some of these things. And maybe there's a way to make it better for you, or just to give you a pre-warning, or just to let you know that you're not the first one to go here, you know? And this book called The Tao of Wu, the word Tao actually means the way. And this is just the way of the Wu, the way I've traveled personally, you know? It's not like I pull from a lot of stories in life from the Bible or from the Quran or from the Bhagavad Gita. And these books are fascinating books that have enlightened me, enlightened many men around the world. But some of these stories of these men, you know, we could argue sometimes, did they exist or didn't exist? You know, did Moses really split the Red Sea? Can we get a scientific proof of that? Or do we just believe with our faith? But one thing you can say about the Tao of Wu is that this person has lived. You have seen him. And therefore, maybe it's practical logistics of it is real because he's a living example of it. And that's what I strive to do, is give us a living example. And there's a few errors in the book, regardless, because I'm not the editor. I was reading it through it. I just want to point this out. In this book, where I'm alive and well and breathing every day, and I went back and I corrected it. I mean, I sat there, I went through it, corrected it 3 times, and he still put the total square miles of land at 57,250,000 is in the book. But it's actually 57,255,000. Now, you can estimate it and you can accept that estimation.
But you knew it.
I was like, man, I told him 10 times. But somebody hit that wrong key on the computer. So,
yeah, I noticed that when I was reading it. I was really just
but in school of the terms, so you can imagine that if a man who's alive could find, maybe I give you 2% of error in the book, right? If I could find 2% of error in my book and I'm living, imagine how much error we could find in the books that's 2,000 years old that we all take and read, you know what I mean? And so it kind of gave me another perspective, like, you know what, I'm going to try to deal with what I can see, smell, and taste in today's society.
So, you know, you mentioned Clinton, and we're still sort of in that first, I started to do that.
That's called acceleration.
Can I take my move back? I'm just going to do everything you do. So, early on in the book, you talk about how a man gets to heaven, right? So we could talk about that, the kinds of people that he surrounds himself around. And even when you mentioned Tarantino, and I think you've had a life of being surrounded by people that help you achieve this wisdom. But one of the people I'm thinking about, and I'm going to tell you the truth, it's just because I'm from the South. And so when you talk about Hollins early on and the trips to North Carolina and what he represented. So, but there is a passage that I really want you to read, because I actually think if you read it, then everybody's just going to go right out about the book. I think. So they can get that passage.
The one from,
with the cough.
Oh, I could quote that one.
You can read around it then. I got to have you read something.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I want to hear that. So, I mean, I don't know where you would start, the top or the middle of it, but.
Okay.
And, I mean, do we need to set it up with Hollins?
Well, I'll read from here. My family broke up when I was 3 years old. And my last memory of my father, he's holding me in one hand and a hammer in the other, and he's smashing up the furniture. Since my mom couldn't afford to raise the 5 of us herself, she sent us away, and I went to live off in North Carolina with her family. That's where I got to know my Uncle Hollis, the first wise man in my life. Uncle Hollis had this Solomon kind of wisdom. He was a doctor, a wealthy man, had hundreds of acres of land, many adopted children, and he had a joy of life that followed him everywhere he went. He was the kind of man that you could call enlightened. Every one of my mom's brothers and sisters had a different father. And her father's family didn't like my grandmother because, you know, she had my mom when she was 16 years old. But Uncle Hollis had a love for his brother's daughter. And he always checked upon her. He tried to put her through school, but she never went. She just kept having more babies. You know how little girls would be. But Hollis had a compulsion to take care of these kids, and especially me. He saw something special in me. And as soon as I got to North Carolina, he started teaching me things, you know, put the books aside for me, saying, Bobby, I want you to study. Before I turned 4, I was doing my oldest brother's homework. From Uncle Hollis, I learned about science and religion. and some medicine, and also poetry and spoken words. One of the first books he gave me was a collection of Mother Goose rhymes. I started to memorize those immediately. And he used to walk around saying these strange verses. One verse is like this. It says, "Never cry when a hearse go by, because you may be the next to die. They will cover you in a cold white sheet and put you down about 6 feet deep. It's not so bad the first few weeks, until you start to mumble and creep, and the worms crawl in and the worms crawl out, and the ants play pinochle with your snout. And your stomach will turn the sickest green as the pus runs out like thick whipped cream." That's nasty. But that's an old Southern folk rhyme, you know what I mean? And I could say it's one of many that Uncle Hollis used to say, and not long after I started saying it myself. He took me to church every Sunday, Southern Baptist. And I'm going to end right there. The moral of it was that this doctor, this Southern doctor who was a Baptist, had life in him, had poetry in him, had wisdom in him, and he took the time to put some of that into me. From the age of 3.5 to 7.5, I stayed with him. And then they sent us back to New York to spend the summer with my mother, and we went back and spent the summer there. And I was always looking forward to going back to him. At the end of the summer, he passed away from a heart attack. And that was like the cutoff of the well, you know? And from that year forth, you know, the poverty got harder, and you know, life just got crazier. But still, I never forgot those poems. I never forgot how to read Mother Goose with rhythm. Because see, we all probably read Mother Goose, but to read it in song form, it's hip-hop. You know what I mean? And the funniest thing I can say, and the book mentions this, and I can mention this to y'all, is actually when Uncle Hollis sent me back to New York was the year I first got exposed to hip-hop. And then when I went to go back, he was no more. But the things he gave me, and now this intro to hip-hop through the Rza, the second wise man in my life, led on to me basically becoming the Rza, you know? First, of course, Prince Rakim, but it's weird how these things happen, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think all that's connected around language, you know? I mean, that little thing, that sounds like something. Now, who would do that? That sounds like maybe older bastards. You think about who could really flip that, you know, of the whole crew.
Right.
Just turn that into something. So I think all of those things are connected to lyricism, to poetry, and to storytelling, I think. So part of this question too, I mean, I like to ask like 5 questions at one time, so I won't. There'll be parenthetical questions, which is like, what will the next book look like? But also this question of where the storytelling comes from. Was it all that? Was it all? It's like, okay.
Where did the storytelling come from, Moses?
I come with it. So, but where does that come from? Was it in hip hop that you finally got a knack for storytelling? I had a quote, but I'm not going to read it. Of so much of the compactness of your rhymes, in particular, like the narrative, the story.
Well, hip hop. Over the years, anything you do is better and better. Like you practice martial arts. At first, you punching on sandbags, and eventually you may move to iron pellets, and then eventually you can break a brick. So as time goes on, the energy in your cheek gets more concentrated. So when storytelling in hip hop, that's what happens. You know, I wrote my first lyric at the age of 9. It was because Rza had a lyric. And he used to say his rap to me. At first, I would just only take his rap and go around my friends and say what he said. And then his lyric was meet a young girl who liked to get fresh. You can hug and squeeze and put your hand up her dress. Drink champagne and eat caviar. 2 hours later, take a ride in the car. You know what I mean? So and mine was like, I saw a young girl with a big old breast. I dream I could put my hand up her dress. So I kind of changed it around. But, you know, as you get older, you know, you start writing these stories. Some stories are fantasies. Some stories are what happened the day before. Some stories are escapism. And eventually, by the time I was 13, I had a book of rhymes. You know, maybe I think me and Dirty County, I had about 400 pages of lyrics. When I got into high school, and I would give some credit to Joseph Cillian, my English teacher. What Joseph Cillian did for us in high school, and they teach us in all schools, I think, Curtis High School in Staten Island, he made everybody do a journal. And that was like 30% of your grade. And so I would write in my journal, but I would write so honestly in my journal. Like I thought that he had a crush on the other girl I had a crush on. Because he was looking at her like, I was like, he liked her, man. I liked her. Everybody had to like her. She had a nice big booty. Right? But Joe used to read my journal and come back to me and like, well, you got a great way of writing. Your honesty is there. The way you describe the things is there. He said, why don't you join the school newspaper team? And, you know, I think you can do something with writing. So I joined the school paper for the first semester, and I started writing stories for the paper. And then they put me in the honors class and offered me a scholarship for writing. And of course, I met a few girls, and I met a few homies. And by the end of the year, I didn't care about school no more. I became, you know, one of cut school and drink 40 ounces. But Joe made me realize that I did have a talent of writing. The solid, liquid, and the gases, which are the elements. And all the land masses and all that space catalyst is all just different variations of these same 99 elements. Today, chemists is up to about 106, 107. But
that's worth $28.
Yeah.
What's the quote that you have in the book about MLK?
Yeah, Martin Luther King, he broke down the work of a man's body, how much iron we had, how much gold, copper, zinc, and it was only about $28. But this mathematical equation that we have, you know, I strive to put this information concentrated inside 4 lines so that when a person hear the lyrics or read the lyrics, they have to go research and will inspire them to come across other things.
So I'm gonna see if I can make a little jump. I can turn this into this other question. Rza Rector comes out of the Grave Diggers. So if we're talking about Rza Rector, you know, we got to talk about Bobby Digital. And I want to read you this quote and put it to you this way. It's a Dickens quote. See what you say. Let me see what this question. You know, I told you, I am a nerd. I do like to write stuff down. I get paid to do it. Where's this question? The question is. Well, I mean, should we have, maybe I had to read this section again, but let me put this question to you. Where's my question? I guess I'm going to have to make it up here. It's about alter egos. It's about persona. So Dickens has this quote. I can remember. I don't even forget it, I guess. And is it in David Copperfield? It's the way David Copperfield starts. Let me just go with it. And so at the beginning of it, he says, will I be the hero of my life, or will someone else be the hero of my life? That remains to be seen. It's something like that. Will I be the hero of the story or the hero of my life? So when you start talking about Bobby Digital and what that represents for you, it's one of the many kinds of personas. But he's got meat on it. I mean,
right.
you haven't even put a record out as busy yet, right?
Not officially, right?
So we got to give him some time. But I'm framing it in that way, like this question of, you have the chapter, is it Gods and Heroes? You have a chapter that talks about that. So I wanted to talk about how he comes into being, and then that essential question, which is, who is the hero of this book?
Well, when I wrote this book, and when I think about heroes and identities of ourselves, I'm sure we all can recognize that we all have many personalities, depending on who we're around, maybe depending on what you drink and smoke, depending on what you ate, you know what I mean, how you feel, your economic situation. What I've done as an artist was I've identified these different personalities and I've given them names. You know what I mean? So, you know, in the Holy Quran, it says that there's 99 attributes of Allah. And I took that philosophy and applied it to myself. I'm up to about 16 right now. About 16 different ways to describe myself. Rza Rector, or Bobby Digital, Bobby Stills, these are all personalities. Now, who is the hero of my life? It has to be me at one point. But with you? Well, to me, when you accumulate all of them together, I think you end up with Rza. I think that Z, for me, is trying to go this way and figure it out. No, go that way and figure it out. No. Wait, you was going right the first time. You know what I mean? That's how I see myself, and I'm not ashamed of it. You know, in the book you'll hear me talk about all the different people that help me, or all the different philosophies we come across, and we take some of these things as fact. We take some things and dismiss them as fiction, but it's each a learning part building you. The same way you put food in your body, and it changes the molecular of your body and causes you to grow, it's the same thing with the food in your mind. And at the end of the day, I've been eating for 40 years, only weigh 170 pounds. This is the amassment of my intake of food. But this man that I walk around, and I'm proud to be him, I'm not ashamed of him from his negative things he's done, from the foolish things he's done, from the benevolent things he's done. I'm not ashamed of him, but he has amassed all these identities to be, which I would call, and not even Robert Davis.
Right, that's what
I'm saying Bobby, my wife calls me Bobby, but the persona that I embody is the Rza. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's even beyond me. I don't know what he may do, not being schizophrenia, not a schizophrenia guy. But it's even yourself. Sometimes your own little voice has hit you with that answer that you need me to know. You have the answer within yourself,
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that is to say that Rza, it's an important distinction, I think, to say it's not Robert Fitzgerald Diggs, it's Rza is the hero of my life, which is to say it's somebody that you decided to sort of to become. So yeah, that's a good question, man.
That's a good question. Like,
yeah.
Where's the doctor at now, right? Somebody's in the back, like, I got a prescription for this guy.
So we're gonna have to move around. And then, is it your move?
No, man. People say they can't play chess to lure you in to a trap and then zap you out.
That's definitely what I'm doing.
I'm checking you
Until
out.
you beat me. That's what I'm doing. So look, now this is a big question. And in some ways, I think this is a question for people. I mean, it can't be that many people in the audience who don't know what you represent, what you do. And then when I say you, I mean we too. I mean anybody under, I would say 50, maybe a couple of people under 62 have been impacted by the way you impacted hip-hop, right? So there's that. But there's some people who don't quite know still what it's all about. So what they would say, holding the dial of Wu in their hand, would be like, well, how do you reconcile what hip-hop seems to be commercially with stillness, with peace, with all the other things that I really do think you represent? So I want you to show people like that. And I could do, you have a chapter called Above the Ruckus, and as soon as I saw that chapter,
Right.
and it's about being above the ruckus, I thought about Bring the Ruckus.
Like, bring the
So
ruckus.
there's that tension, right? Like the same person who could start with Bring the Ruckus and also say, we want to be above the ruckus. That is the tension that I think people are curious about.
I was up in Philadelphia a couple of months ago. I had a chance to sit down with Kenny Gamble from Gamble and Huff.
Yeah.
And these guys have wrote so many beautiful songs over the years, and I went to him to actually talk to him about writing a new album and maybe writing an album that was more full of joy, right? Now he heard of Wu-Tang Clan, but he don't know my music in a sense. So he knows the Method Man, knows Old Dirty Bastard, but he doesn't listen to that music. And so I told him I want to take a few of his songs and maybe change them for fit today's marketplace. Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, tell me something about your music, brother. I said, well, the first song of my first album is called Bring the Motherfucking Ruckus. So he's like, whoa, brother. And I'm like, listen. I said, that's how we felt. We felt like, yo, fuck, excuse my language, but I think we have a lot of adults here. But we felt like, yo, fuck that. We coming in, we about to break the door down if he's not gonna let us in, And this is a young energy that you're supposed to have. I think as all of us as young Americans, we go back and see how the people in the 60s, when they marched, whether it was the March on Washington, or you go down and see the hippie movement, all the young white kids, we rebelling against the way society was treating them and looking at them, or the ones that didn't want to cut their hair. We become the force of what we are, or what's rising in us. And the next generation, the older generations, sometimes we dispel it. We don't take it serious, but we should. At the same time, when you're young, you don't have the experience of what an old man may have reached. And so therefore, your wildness, your ruckusness, your militariness is based on your ignorance. Now, if you get a chance to live longer, you'll realize that. But, you know, growing up in my neighborhood, they said the average black man would be either dead or in jail by 25. And let's take two great black men. Not just going to answer the question. Let's take two great black men that we know that died before they were 25, but world famous. Tupac and Biggie. Both dead by 25. World famous. Represented what they represented. But imagine if Pac could have made it to 40. Even the great Dr. King, who we celebrate every year his birthday, he didn't make it to 40. Even one of the greatest men to walk the planet, according to the story of Jesus Christ, he didn't make it to 40. So, when I'm now saying, you know, the rise above the ruckus, you know what I'm saying? I realize that after every bomb, there's the calm. The calmness was before the bomb, and the calmness returns after the bomb. So therefore, the calmness is much more permanent. And to be above the ruckus is to find that calmness in yourself. And then being that I understand the science of resonance, and we should all understand the science of resonance in our lives, because sound resonates, everything resonates. If by all of us being in this room, we have enough heat in our bodies to outdo the AC. If we all start running and jogging, we'll be sweating, and then the AC won't be able to hold us, because we all resonate. So through resonance, I realize that, you know, if we activate calmly with each other, like the wu-tang clan, I gotta convince these brothers of this too. Like, yo, let's get calm. And they're like, man, fuck that. Right. After 3 or 4 brothers have gotten calm, the 5th one can't help it. It's like when you take a nail. It's just a nail. When you put it on a magnet, you leave it there, it becomes a magnet. And then we put it back with the other nails, they like, hey, I want to be a magnet too. This is that resonance. And that's what I mean by rising above the ruckus. By understanding that, you know, I come in peace now, prepared for war. Before I came in war trying to force peace. War exists. You know, every time you breathe in, there's some bacteria going in with the rest of this good shit. And your body got to fight that off. You know what I mean? So war exists. But instead of coming in war trying to form peace, how about we start with peace? You know what I mean? And prepare for the war. Yeah. Man. I'm glad that book brought you here. Okay, man, look, I think we're going to do some questions. I think I heard what Jane said. Jane, I'm going to give you some love at the end now. Y'all remind me before we leave. Rza, you remind me. Once you know, then you go to wisdom. Wisdom is an expression of knowledge. That's how to speak it, to reflect it, and to show it, the weight of it. Once you know in your mind, and you have wisdom to speak it, then understanding comes about. Because you've known it, and you've shown it now to understand it. Every man should have those things first as you go from a child. And then you go to what? Freedom, justice, and equality. Now freedom, we all want freedom, but freedom must operate under a law of justice. Because I'm free to smack him in the face. But then justice must come in. And that's the reward or the penalty for my action. So therefore we deal with what? Equality. All men are created equal. That leads for the peace. Now if you got peace in yourself, you got time for love. You ain't gonna have no love, you don't got no peace. Because peace is confusion. I mean, peace is the absence of confusion. But if you're confused, how are you going to love somebody? You don't even know her. You don't understand her. You can't love her because you're not at peace with her or yourself. But once you do have that peace, and you do have that love, there comes that happiness, baby. This, right before your chapter about the ruckus, it says, forces in this world will tell you that you're a victim. A victim of your family, your race, your past, and your history. I say, don't believe them. They don't know you. Look inside and find your true self. It's there. Find it and give it a name. Thank you.